New York State budget, just want to make a few comments on things that I believe impact the businesses in our community. One is in regards to they're both proposals that have been proposed in the governor's budget. And, to be honest with you, I like the governor. I've met with him a couple times. He's a good man, he's a smart man, and he's really dealing with a mess. There's no doubt about that. Same token, I believe that the reforms in the Empire Zone program, as currently proposed, are not good and are going to hurt our businesses in our community. If you remember, we did not have the Empire Zone when I took office in 2000. After working with Mike Breslin, we were able to finally have Cohoes included. And we have slowly and surely, and Ed Tremblay knows this better than anybody else because he's been attending these meetings, brought businesses on one at a time into the various zone areas throughout the community. It may surprise people to know how well it works. Between 2005 and 2007, over $100 million in wages and capital investment have been put into this community by these businesses. There's several businesses throughout the city, of which we're very proud of. And I'm very concerned that some of the changes being proposed will have an impact on those businesses and stem that wage and capital investment. It's true, the Empire Zone has been taken advantage of. It's true, primarily in downstate, that it's wasteful for New York State taxpayers, and we're all taxpayers in one way or the other. But same token, for Cohoes in upstate New York, the changes proposed are not in anyone's best interests. And I'm hopeful that the governor will start to look at that. Changing the rules midstream, and Governor Pataki proposed this. Spitzer was going in that direction until he left office. Patterson's following up on this. Not in the best interest. The other proposal that's out there, which impacts two of our businesses here in our community, but impacts thousands of businesses throughout New York State, is a proposal to expand wine sales in grocery stores. Now, we've all been on vacation where we've seen wine in other other states. I like grocery stores just like as well as anybody else. But the same token, just looking at Cohoes, you have two business owners who pay their property taxes, pay their state income tax, pay their licensing fees, employ people in the community. Why should they have their livelihood destroyed? I don't think it's time to be doing this. I understand the governor is trying to take desperate measures. Maybe he's tipping some of the sacred cows that I've referenced as well. And the same token, I've brought back suggestions to the governor on how he can take some temporary measures that do not wipe out an industry. I'm certainly hopeful that this will not happen. As mayor, but also as a business owner, I have seen firsthand how New York State has slowly but surely eroded the base of small businesses. I think, unfortunately, big business gets a lot of benefits, but it's small business, as I've mentioned a couple times this evening, that really needs the support and does not need to be continually be attacked. We will continue this year to plod through and finish up our census. 2010 is the major year. Melissa, through building and planning, has been making sure that all of our new streets are added. We've actually added some old streets that weren't on in the last census. So hopefully we're going to see our numbers improve. And it's important to see that happen. Many people don't realize, like as I mentioned earlier, sales tax, probably about 40% of our operating revenue. Sales tax is strictly driven by the number of residents we have in our community. Every single head counts. And therefore, we want to make sure that we have as accurate of a count for our census because we're competing with the rest of the communities in Albany County. The cities, the ones who need the money the most, over this last decade, have suffered the most as the county continues to use the same formula they've used. So therefore, we're very, very actively involved. I'll be reaching out, as I mentioned, to the community organizations in regards to City Finance 101. We'll also be speaking about the census and how important it is for people not to be afraid. just fill out the information, get it back. We need that information to give us an accurate measurement. As much as I debated discussing the Catholic churches in Cohoes, I think that it's time that we at least discuss it a little bit. As you know, a recent decision was made in regards to what facilities will remain open or closed here in the city of Cohoes, and it's not my position to discuss that decision. If you look at the history of Cohoes, which had in its history 37 different types of churches, which also had a population of over 24,000 people back in the late 1800s. The majority of those churches were driven by particular ethnic origins. We all know that if you've been in Cohoes for more than 5 years, where the Italian and the French and the Polish and the Irish went to church. Well, unfortunately, our population's dropped. Nationally, the number of people attending Mass has dropped. There's been other compounded difficulties, including the number of priests, and therefore it's not a surprise that the number of churches have diminished in this city. My heart goes out to all those who are losing their church, but at the same token, they all need to know that the city is very committed to working with the diocese to make sure that all the hard work and sacrifice, not only of the generation that's here today, but the generations that came long before us, that built these beautiful marvels, that these churches are configured or changed to an appropriate and respected fashion. I think that's the least that we can do for those people. Probably the biggest highlight of this year, by far, was the opening of the Falls View Park in August of 2008. It definitely has viewings that we never legally saw before. Some people may have crawled underneath the fence and got out there one way or the other to see the falls. Or for those of us who did what our parents told us to do, we stayed away from the falls. This is truly beyond anyone's wildest dreams. We saw over 20,000 visitors in the first 3 months to the Falls Overlook. I think that's remarkable, and it really is exciting when the Falls Overlook Park will open up again in the springtime, on what we can expect to see in the city of Cohoes. What to me has been the most gratifying is to see those individuals, maybe 10, 15 years older than myself and above, that the satisfaction in their eyes when they are able to sit there and just stare at the falls as if it's just exactly right in front of them. Many people were cynical, saying it would never happen. And it kind of brings me back to, as I start to close out this evening's comments, that we will get through difficult times. January 1st, 2000, I was fortunate to come into office. George Primo knows he came in at the council at the time with me as well. We were left with a $1.4 million deficit. We were left with a tax certiorari case that provided $8 million judgment against the city and the school district. The number of job losses was traumatic. The tax increase potentials was dramatic. And bankruptcy was staring us straight in the face. Fortunately, through a lot of different procedures, and Mike DeRocher knows this better than anybody else because he implemented a lot of them, we were able to get our financial footing back on ground. And on December 31st, 2001, we closed on a settlement that avoided that financial catastrophe that I mentioned. One of the things that I really pushed for during this negotiation was to have a new overlook closer to the falls. We finally have it, and as I said earlier, it's beyond our wildest dreams. This whole 9 years later, as we look at some very grim and dark times, reminds me what it was like back in 2000. It was challenging, it was scary. We definitely had our tug of wars on a lot of different things through a variety of different groups and organizations. But we got through it then, and we'll get through it again, one way or the other. I, myself personally, and I'm more reinvigorated after last week's retreat because I saw the dedication of the council members and department heads and how they're willing to walk and make the tough calls and support what calls we're going to make in the future. I'm more committed now during these tough times than I've ever been committed before. And as I have the support of the community, as the council has the support of the community, we will make those difficult decisions. And we'll do that in the best interest of the city of Cohoes. My campaign slogan, which I used back in 1999 and still holds today, is "It's all about Cohoes." And it still is all about Cohoes. Thank you very much.